Last time, a king so rich he crashed an economy. This time, the family that did the very same thing and built something that still rules your life today. This single gold coin is about to buy something no coin should ever be able to buy. Not land, not an army, a pope, a king, an entire age of human history. For 300 years, one family in Florence never wore a crown, never led an army, never sat on a throne. And yet they quietly owned the men who did. They bankrolled popes, they crowned kings, they paid for the Renaissance itself, and they did it with a weapon no sword could stop, a weapon hidden inside a book of numbers. This is the story of the Medici, the bankers who learned the oldest secret of power. You don't need the crown if you own the man wearing it. Florence, 1397. A man named Giovanni di Bicci de' Medici opens a bank. He is nobody. No title, no inheritance, no army, just a sharp mind and a dangerous idea. Because what Giovanni wants to do is, technically, a sin. The church has one iron rule: usury, lending money for interest, is forbidden. A sin against God, punishable by hell. So how do you build a bank in a world where charging interest can damn your soul? You hide it. Giovanni uses a quiet trick called the Bill of Exchange, a document to move money between cities and currencies. On paper, it is just currency exchange, but baked into the exchange rate is the interest, the profit the church forbids, collected invisibly in the gap between two currencies. The sin made to disappear. And Giovanni carves one rule into the family's bones, a rule that keeps them alive for a century. Never lend to princes. Serve the church. Kings start wars and never repay. The church always pays. And the richest client in all of Europe is about to walk through his door. To understand what the Medici did next, you have to understand who they captured. Not a duke, not a city, the Pope. The Medici became the personal bankers of the Catholic Church, keepers of the Apostolic Chamber, the treasury of the most powerful institution on earth. Every tithe, every fee, every coin flowing from England, France, Germany, Spain, all of it, sooner or later, moving through Medici hands. Here is the number that tells the whole story. In the 1420s and 30s, more than 60% of the bank's profits came from one branch, Rome, the branch that banked the Pope. By 1427, that branch held around 100,000 florins of church money on deposit, while the entire bank was capitalized at barely 25,000. The Medici were not rich because they had money. They were rich because they controlled God's money. And here is the irony. The same church that called money lending a mortal sin could not survive without its moneylenders. Whoever banks God banks everyone. But gold was never the Medici's real weapon. Information was. They perfected a system that still runs the world economy today. Double-entry bookkeeping. Every transaction recorded twice, once as a debit, once as a credit. The two columns must always balance. It sounds boring, it was revolutionary. Because now nothing could hide, no manager could quietly steal, no loss could be buried. From a single room in Florence, the family could see the truth of every deal in every city at a glance. They did not just have money, they had X-ray vision into money. And they built a network to match. Rome, Venice, Naples, Milan, Geneva, Lyon, Bruges, London. But not as one giant company. Each branch a separate partnership, so if one failed, it could not drag the others down. They invented the firewall that protects corporations to this day. Then, the masterstroke, the letter of credit. A merchant could deposit gold in London and walk into Florence with nothing but a piece of paper and collect his money there. Wealth that crossed a continent of bandits without ever moving. Because it was no longer gold, it was information. Whoever controls the flow of money controls everything money can buy. Which brings us to the most dangerous Medici of all, a man who never held a single official title. Cosimo de' Medici. Cosimo understood what his enemies never did. Real power does not announce itself. He held no crown, no army, no office. Officially, just a citizen. Unofficially, he ruled Florence completely. Through loans no one could refuse, favors no one could repay. Debts that turned the most powerful men in the city into his quiet servants. And then he did what no banker had done before. He bought immortality. Cosimo and his heirs poured their fortune into artists. Donatello, Brunelleschi, Botticelli, and a young Michelangelo raised almost as a son of the family. Part guilt, money to wash away the sin of usury. Part genius, because beauty buys loyalty, and loyalty buys power. The Renaissance you admire was, in large part, a banking family's marketing budget. And the coin kept climbing toward the crown. The family put two of its own sons on the papal throne and married its daughters into the royal house of France, giving the kingdom two queens. A family of merchants had become the blood of kings and the hand of God. Power like that breeds enemies. In 1478, rivals struck the Medici brothers at the altar, during Mass, inside the cathedral. One brother died on the marble. The other survived and took a terrible revenge. The Medici were no longer bankers. They were a dynasty. But remember Giovanni's iron rule: never lend to kings. By the time of Lorenzo the Magnificent, poet, prince, the most brilliant Medici of all, the family had forgotten the rule that made them. Lorenzo was a genius politician and a careless banker. He left the bank to managers who broke every law of caution Giovanni had written, lending enormous sums to exactly the men the family had sworn to avoid: kings, warlords. The London branch loaned a fortune to the kings of England. The Bruges branch bankrolled a reckless duke's wars. And when those rulers lost, they simply refused to pay. Because here is the oldest trap in finance. No court can force a king to repay. You cannot seize a crown. One by one, the great branches went dark. London, Bruges. The network that ruled Europe rotted from the inside, drowning in loans that would never come back. And in 1494, it ended. The Medici were driven out of Florence, the bank's doors shut, its assets seized. The greatest financial empire the world had ever seen, undone not by an enemy army, but by its own ambition. By forgetting the one rule it was built on. But you cannot kill an idea. The Medici were gone, but their inventions never left. Double-entry bookkeeping, branch banking, letters of credit, companies that shield risk. Every bank on earth today is, in a sense, still a Medici bank. They taught the world the secret that still rules it. The throne was never the real seat of power. The ledger is. Whoever controls the coin already owns the crown. This was Coin and Crown. If you want to know who really runs the world, subscribe, because next time we follow the money into the bank that bought an empire. The coin always remembers.